We have some extremely exciting news for you all. The Anselm Society is going to be hosting our first weekend event since 2022. It's called Anselm's Long Expected Feast. It's going to be this September 19th and 20th. And as you may be able to guess, all you Tolkien fans out there, it will be in honor, in part, of Bilbo and Frodo's birthdays. The weekend will include a retreat with your choice of in depth workshops, an afternoon of restorative activities, and an evening pub night, plus a few very special surprises. Now, we are expecting that tickets for this event are going to sell out fast. So please make plans and get on the early bird wait list for this over at anselmsociety.org/fall feast. Once again, keep a lookout for Anselm's long expected feast this September 19th and 20th. Walking a path along the roots of Pikes Peak, you take a fork in the road to the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Inside is a raucous conversation on the arts, faith, and whether Spider-Man or Hulk would win in a fight. At a corner table by the fire are two people. One of them is arguing that we should really be talking about Captain America. That's me, Matthew Mellema, and welcome to Believe to See, a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. Here at Believe to See, we explore the relationship between faith, art, and storytelling. Our goal is to help you connect the great story, the great stories, and our own stories in order to understand what it means to live with a Christian imagination. So, listeners, on the podcast recently, you may have heard me and the other co hosts talking about how important it is to get kids and middle schoolers to read. I think it's safe to say that our guest at the pub table today feels as strongly about this as we do. The author Meredith Davis lives in Austin, Texas, where she founded the Austin chapter of the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators. She also has an MFA in writing for children and young adults. And the way that she put this into action is through her new book series, The Amazing Adventures of Noah Minor. The first book in this series came out last year. The second book is hot off the presses, came out in May of this year. And she goes about encouraging kids to read in an interesting way that I am very excited to talk about. It is by superheroes. So buckle up for a conversation about middle grade readers, imagination, science, and superheroes. Meredith, thank you so much for joining us at the Anselm Society Digital Pub Table.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love that intro. I really am intrigued by the conversation happening over by that in the pub by that fireplace about the Captain America and the Spider-Man and the Hulk. I love it.
You know, it's one
You
that
set the
me and I'm
stage.
sure a lot of your a lot of your readers have probably been having all the time. So
Mhm.
let's
Mhm.
start off with just a little bio about you as a person, as a writer. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm a children's book author. You hit some of the high points as far as my journey as a writer. I also worked at an independent children's bookstore for a while, which was just like a highlight. It was such a fun job. Have 3 kids. I have a grandson who's adorable, lives in town, love to read to him, and I love children's books. I've always loved reading, and I love writing them. So, that's pretty much what I do full time now is write children's books, and I love it.
Great. So now let's talk about these particular children's books. So again, the name of the series is The Amazing Adventures of Noah Minor. So here it is. Give us the elevator pitch.
All right. Okay, well, you can't read book 2 without knowing a little bit about book 1, although you could pick it up and figure it out. But basically, what these books are about is a boy named Noah Minor who finds out that he has a superpower. And what he can do is he can manipulate gravity. And so, the first book is a lot about him finding out he has the power, but then like not really being able to access it. Like he has the ability, but he can't get to it. And then even when he accesses it, he's like totally out of control. And so that's a lot of the arc of the first book. The second book picks up where the first left off. We've, of course, got a bad guy. We've got a villain. He escaped in the first book, so we're back after him in the second book. But we take the action to New York City, and Noah's struggle in this book is it's a lot about him controlling his anger because the motivation that he's using for his superpowers is not a healthy way. So it's powerful, but it's not great. So you bring up Spider-Man, you bring up the Hulk. Spider-Man was kind of like the model in the first book. Noah is obsessed with superheroes. He always wondered if maybe he was a superhero. This a really crazy thing happened to him when he was a baby. And so that famous phrase from Spider-Man that everybody knows, uh, with great power must come great responsibility, is just like a thread that runs through that first book. So the second book, we've got the Hulk, and it's all about the angrier I get, the stronger I get. And so those are the arcs of the two.
All right. So I am so fascinated by how you came about writing these books. So we already talked in the intro about you have this longstanding passion for children's literature and writing books for a younger audience. So I am curious about why you took this passion and channeled it through the funnel of superhero stories. So what led you to write the superhero stories in particular?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things I really wanted to do with these books was capture this whole sense of like the extraordinary and the ordinary. And you just never know when you might be the chosen one, when you might be the person that's got this a crazy thing happening. And so I felt like superheroes was a great way to find that out. Like these kids, this world were ordinary until in 7th grade, everybody takes the eye test, and then when you're looking at the chart is looking at you and telling and identifying whether or not you've got this power. So that was one thing I wanted to do was just create this whole world where you never know when you might find out if you're the one that's got this power. And then I loved the idea of, like, a training that had to happen. So, like, we've got this secret training, this whole secret it's a government agency that trains these kids called Gravitas, and so I love the idea of there being 2 worlds, having a school world where everything's pretty normal, and then you've got this other world where you're learning how to use your powers, but it's secret, it's top secret. And then I also just I loved like, you talked in the beginning about science, and so the superpower is not that he can fly necessarily, but he can manipulate gravity. He can't defy gravity, but he can manipulate it. And so that gave me a lot of opportunity to think about the physics of the power. And so we get into that. We get into like how each stage of the power comes and how you use it. And it's based on science. And I think that that just really the idea of the extraordinary and the ordinary, there's like these extraordinary things that can happen. And so I love to find these little chinks in science where it's like, we know this much, but there's this one little thing that's a mystery. I'm like, perfect. I'll take the mystery. That's where I'll bring my imagination in, but it'll also be based in fact. So it kind of adds to that feeling of you never know when it might happen. What there's like this magic right beyond our glimpses, you know? So that's why I wanted to do superheroes. I also just feel like kids love superheroes. I mean, the Spider-Man how many Spider-Man movies are there? So I wanted to hit on something that kids were already interested in.
I started counting off the Spider-Man movies in my head. I wasn't able to get the number quickly enough, but
There's a lot.
so you're absolutely right about the sort of the symbolic language of superhero stories. About there's sort of this timeless appeal, and they're very influential to kids in particular. So, what's your story with superheroes? Did you grow up reading the comics? Did you come to them more recently? What's your relationship with the supers?
I think I was introduced more to the superheroes with my kids. So, as a kid, I read, but I wasn't reading comic books. I probably honestly wasn't allowed to read comic books until I was older. But what I did love is a good hero story. And so I think that's where kind of it generated in the beginning was these idea of there being a heroic. And if it's a heroic kid, all the better. And I also love the outsider stories and I feel like superheroes in a way are kind of outsiders. They're always a little bit outliers. They have to remain secret. They're often, you know, against somebody. And I also am a very black and white kind of person. So this whole like good and evil, but then like being challenged by that, like, is there a little bit of good in that mostly evil? And are we all capable of evil? Like I love stewing on those questions. And I feel like the superhero narratives often do that.
All right. So what superhero stories were the ones that first grabbed your attention? You said I picture you just sort of looking over your kid's shoulder as they're consuming some stories. Were there any in particular that grabbed you, or did it all just sort of seep in through the culture?
You know, Spider-Man in particular fascinates me because it was such a random thing that gave him his powers. I think it's super cool that he can obviously shoot the web out of his wrists, but I also love all the different iterations of it. And so it really that you watch these movies and like the Miles Morales one is so cool. And so I love watching how different creators can take kind of a legend because I feel like Spider-Man has just kind of become this legend and what they do with it. And so I think I first became aware that the Spider-Man just because there's so many iterations of it. Um, yeah, I think that's the way and I also loved that in the beginning, he kind of makes his own costume. I'm like 'ca the mechanics of that, of like, "Oh, wow, he that's like that looks not that great," you know? So there's lots of, I don't know, it felt very kid-friendly to me. It's like he's a kid when he finds out, and then he can do these incredible things, but what does he do with that? So there's all this, um I don't know, to me, there's some carryover to kids, like, "What if it was me?" There's this whole what if question that I think Spider-Man in particular, brings about. There's others as well, but I just I don't know, I like the Spider-Man narrative.
I think that's a really good choice, and I think you making that sort of one of the motifs of the first Noah Minor book makes a lot of sense
Mhm,
because, like you were talking about, the Spider-Man mythos really touches on all the major archetypes we come to expect in a superhero story.
mhm,
But before Spider-Man, a lot of the superheroes were just sort of these, all around cool guys who like have everything together. Then they become a superhero. Peter Parker broke the mold in a couple ways. First, because he was a teenager, he wasn't a grown man, he's a teenager. And
mhm,
two, he's a nerd.
mhm.
He's really
Yeah,
good with science, he can't get the girl, and
right.
apparently there's a lot of pushback from the Marvel publishers who like, "Do you really want a nerd to be a superhero?" Yes, we do.
Yeah,
And that's a very established thing now that we almost expect
for sure.
that to happen. I think a lot of
Right.
that goes back to it. And I totally agree with what you were saying with the Miles Morales movies. So the Sony Into the Spider-Verse, Across the
Mhm.
Spider-Verse.
Mm,
I
mhm.
love those movies
Yeah.
so much.
Yes.
Tell me this, what were some of the things that stood out to you about those movies in particular as an example of what superheroes can get right?
Oh gosh. Well, I love the gray in that. You know, you've got the this you've got all these different Spider-Mans that come in first of all. Like you've got this whole Spider-Verse. And so there's all these different iterations of a Spider-Man. You know, you've got the ones from history that brings in all of these ones. And then I love the whole I hope I get this right. Is it his uncle? That's the one that he spray paints with? Yes. And then it's like, "Wait a second, what?" I love the twist of that story. I didn't expect it. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. And so I love the whole thing that his dad is this big good guy and his uncle who he admires and wants to go off and be with, he's, like, all of a sudden, like, entangled with this bad thing. The whole drama of it was great, and I also love the animation. I thought it was so cool. I just love the animation. I love the soundtrack. I listened to that soundtrack, so I thought it brought a cool factor to it. That was I mean, it's always been kinda cool, but it almost brought it more it felt different to me than a lot of the superhero stories do. It wasn't as complicated. I feel like some of the more recent ones have gotten very convoluted. You have to really know the story to be able to get into them. So that one, I'm like, "I can follow that one. I like it."
Yeah, exactly. Some of the more modern, like, TV series, for supers, it's like having a part-time job keeping up
Yeah.
with all the lore,
Yes.
but yeah,
Yeah.
to what you said, about the first, Into the Spider-Verse, absolutely, the archetypes they have, like, Miles, again, he's a teenager who is absolutely a 100% believable teenager,
Mhm.
and I love how they did that. I love the animation styles. They really
Mm.
lean in.
Mhm.
The Spider-Verse, all of the different iterations, all the dozens upon dozens of different interpretations, different creative people have had over the decades. They're all there. They're all juxtaposed together, all the styles, all the stories. It's great. And I will tell you this, something that happened here locally is the local Colorado Springs Philharmonic played the movie, but they had the actual orchestra doing the music for it.
How
Then they did that live. So
cool.
me and my wife took we have 4 young kids.
Oh,
They
yeah.
each dressed up as a different Spider-Man from the show,
Oh, that's
and we had
so
a great time. The crowd
cool.
was
I
super it
love
was so
it.
cool.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
I feel like if you're gonna hold up, like, what could superhero stories be at their best, I think those movies are right up there near the top.
Oh, that's amazing. That's such a great idea. Oh,
Oh,
cool. I
absolutely.
love that your kids dressed up. I just love that your kids dressed up too. My kids love to do that too. They were super fan kids when it was like the new Star Wars or when they got older,
Mhm.
like I don't know, Pirates of the Caribbean. They'd always dress up to go to the day, the release of the, when a movie first dropped. And I think it's just such a fun thing. It's play. It allows kids, even as they get older, to still like engage in play, which I think is interesting. Like in the Minor Miracle, like Noah
Mhm.
Minor is starting to think like he always used to think that he was a superhero, and then he starts thinking, "Well, I'm too old." He's 12. He's like, "I can't really think I'm a superhero." And then lo and behold, he finds out he has superpowers. But I think that's something that would resonate with kids. That 12-year-old is a hard age, but I feel like movies, entertainment, it's like okay to go be silly and or cool. Like just dress up and have fun with it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Just see what all the kids these days are doing with the Minecraft movie.
Oh
All the
yeah.
memes that I barely understand,
Oh, oh
but yeah,
god, the
to
memes. I'm like the worst. I feel so old when my kids have to explain a meme to me.
exactly. Chicken Jockey and Flint and Steel both mean things. I don't
I
know.
don't
I don't
know.
know. The
I
kids
don't
are in
know.
my kids love it. But, that is an interesting, into this book series. So, again, like you mentioned, you have the kid who's 12 years old, very, very important age, and, like, the superhero powers just plays so well into this idea of, like, growing, adolescence, you're changing, you feel like you're kinda in between childhood and adulthood, you don't totally fit into either one, and now you throw in superpowers.
Right.
So I am very curious about how you landed on this particular superpower. I think it's really cool. I'd like to hear how you landed on what his superpower is. So tell us what the superpower is, how you landed on it.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. I love this question. So his superpower is that he can manipulate gravity. And if you think about it, there's a lot of things that you could do if you can manipulate gravity. But the seed of that idea actually came from my husband, who is kind of he's a bigger science nerd than I am. And he was like, he said to me one day, he's like, scientists don't really understand gravity entirely. And I was like, "What do you mean?" I mean, like, you just stick on the ground. That's gravity. And he's like, "No, no, no. Like, there's these things. It's mysterious." And so I was so intrigued by that. And he's like, "Yeah, there's these particles, and they call them gravitons." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Gravitons? I have to use that." So I got really excited about just the vocabulary. Like, the gravitons are the particles, these mysterious particles that are floating around. I don't understand it either. And that gave me the opportunity to call the people who can manipulate gravity gravitars. And then the organization is gravitas. And I came up with like I could write a blue book on how which ones you capitalize and which ones you don't. And so the way that it works is like when you're getting your powers, well, this what it looks like is you can pull things without touching them. And so in the very, very beginning, it's something kinda silly. It's almost like a parlor trick. It's like you can pull that pen across the table. And so, like, that's you getting your powers. Well, how does that even work? Well, you take gravitons and you spin them together until they form this, like, tight connection, like, tight line between you and the object you're trying to move. And I call that the desire line, which just tickles my fancy as a writer because we're always looking for our desire line. And so the character has to form this desire line between him and the thing. And then he focuses on the connection, not the thing, to pull it to himself. And I felt like there was something really kind of deep. I was trying to say something with that. Like we focus on the connection, not on the thing that we want, but on getting it, on the journey, and all these things. So that was me playing around with it. That's the pull. Well, when you get stronger, then you can use your pull to go up. You can connect yourself to the ceiling. You can rise up. So now we look like we're flying. We're actually just rising. If you get more complicated than that, you can pull in two directions. Now, have you ever read Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn?
I have started them. I have a ton of friends who love them. So I think you can assume a lot of our listeners are big fans
Okay.
too.
Okay, well, I have to say that I had not read them before I read this book. I mean, before I wrote this book, and I'm listening to the first one right now, so I haven't read very many. My sons have all read them, and there's so many similarities. Like, when you read Mistborn and you hear about how they use their powers, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I did that too." But just so you know, I didn't copy it. But so there is a science to it, you still are operating in the land of physics, and so Like, if you pull something off a table toward you, it doesn't float through the air to you, it thumps to the ground and then pulls to you. And you can't pull something that's heavier than you. You would pull yourself to the thing, so that takes a new power. So when we get to book 2, we start doing different powers, more advanced powers, and so we move into the, intermediate class, and now we're compressing your gravitons into yourself to make yourself your gravity stronger. If your gravity is stronger, then you can pull something heavier than you. So just you asked why I chose gravity. It was just, like, so fun to play with, and I feel like the concept is simple enough in a way, like, we all know kind of what gravity is, and we understand the physics of how stuff works. Like, the something that's gonna fall off a table and still come, but it's still moving towards you, but now it's on the floor. All those things, yeah, it just gave me an opportunity to really play, but still have science, and again, that just kinda builds on the idea of there is extraordinary in the ordinary. We live in this ordinary world, but there are extraordinary things happening if we just have eyes to see them. So, like, the first book's called The Minor Miracle, which is really a play on Noah Minor's name, Minor Miracle, but it's also, like, there are minor miracles happening all the time. So I got to play around with that language, and, to me, gravity is a minor miracle. The fact that we are hurtling through space, spinning around, that's incredible when you pull way out. I love those videos where someone's, like, telling you, like, the distances and the speeds and all these things where you're like, "I just am making dinner. I'm boiling water for the rice." Like, I'm not but I'm also doing these my body is doing incredible things. The synapses are firing. I wanna walk around in that state of wonder. I hope I can open that up for kids too.
Absolutely. I think what you're doing there is you're taking the explanation up a step. There's sort of like the surface level explanation that we always get when we're first learning science, right? Like, why is the sky blue? Well, because air particles reflect blue light. That's the answer. But then it's like, so why do air particles reflect blue light? You didn't really answer that.
Yeah.
And then the gravity is sort of like the same thing. It's like, well, why? How come when an apple fall drops from a tree, it falls on Isaac Newton's head? Well, because there's this force called gravity that, attracts. Well, why does that happen? I don't know. Just is, right?
Yeah, well, and it's shocking to me that that's still kind of a mystery, you know? Something so
Mhm.
simple seeming is still kind of mysterious.
Oh, absolutely. We can observe what's happening and describe it and, assign mathematical values to it, but that doesn't explain the whole thing. But
Right.
you are playing with that
Mhm.
using scientific principles. So, what do you think is the value of having this world that is based on science? Like,
Mhm.
it's clear you've done your homework about what would this actually look like if this actually existed. What do you think is the value to your middle grade readers about encountering superheroes, but in the context of keeping it as real and science based as you can?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hope that teachers see it as this opportunity to pull it in. Sciences can be part of your everyday. I hope that when they're studying literature, it could be like, hey, what's your springboard into this story? It could be based in something that's around you. Like we're surrounded by ideas, we're surrounded by mystery. So go find one of those. It allows me as a writer to play with it, and it's okay if I didn't get it right because they don't really know what's right, and so it gives me some leeway there. But I think for kids, I mean, I really hope it just opens them up to like, "Hey, science can be cool." Like, science is very cool, and it's not just, like, this one subject that's isolated. There's also like, it's feeding into English, like, now we're overlapping, and so, like, all those times as a kid when I was like, "I will never use this," when I'm learning, like, um, what is it called? Geometry, which is probably mostly right, but, like, you never know when you're gonna use something. My major in college was advertising, and I came out and worked for a year and a half and didn't do it ever again, but now here I am as a author, and I'm, like, doing all kinds of marketing, and I'm pulling out all that stuff, so, like, I hope that that's another thing for kids, and I hope it makes them curious. I hope it sends them to at the end, I'm like, "Gravitons are real," in my author's note, and so they're like, "What? Well, what else is real?" So, like, opening up the, questions of what if, I hope that I hope they see that they can ask these what ifs and there's actually some answers out there, or they can make them up and play around with it, so
Yeah, I love that you have the author's note saying, "No, the gravitons are real," because without the author's note, I think if I came across the term gravitons in a comic book, I'd be like,
yeah.
well, that's obviously made up.
Yeah.
But
No,
no,
yeah.
it is very real.
Uh-huh. It is totally real.
I love what you said about the springboard concept too, because you could see, someone would be like, "Oh, here's this aspect of gravity that's much more interesting than I thought. Let's study that more." I try to do the same. When I'm not podcasting, I'm writing middle grade stories too. Mine are more historical fantasy, so I try very much. I love grounding them in as much historical detail as possible. Again, it's like, ha, you came in for the adventure and the sword fights, but I'm also going to teach you about the
Right.
Third Punic War.
Uh-huh.
What?
Yeah, it's brilliant to do that. In fact, I was just thinking about this today, how, like, my favorite way to take in new information or learn something, whether it's history or science, is to read a kid's book. Because I feel like children's authors, like, distill it to the best, like, just the best stuff. And then, man, if you make it historical fiction, now it's, like, also really fun. I'm engaged in the story, so I love that you do that. And I think it's yeah, historical fiction. It could be like, what's the genre? It's not science I guess it's science fiction. Yeah, it's science fiction, and it's like taking something that's real that you have to study in class, and it's making it more fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that was one element that really stood out to me. Just the grounding in the science, grounding in the things that are the springboard to other things. And something else that really stood out to me, reading through the book, I love how your story integrates with all the illustrations. The illustrator here for this project, Billy Yong, he has so many. I forgot the number of illustrations he has, but they're really permeating every page. And there seems to almost be like a comic booky element to it
Yeah.
that I thought was so cool. So tell me how y'all landed on this approach and how you feel the illustrations serve the story.
Yeah, I love the design of this book. I really like Applaud Waterbrook, they're the publisher, and so they came to me and asked me, like, who did I have in mind? Did I have any illustrators in mind? And so I went out on Instagram and different places where you find illustrators. I looked at some illustrator reps, and I was looking for someone who was illustrating comic type, like a comic feel, and Billy has that comic feel. He does some manga, he does some superhero I think he had some superhero stuff on his portfolio when I looked at it, and so he was one of the names that I gave them. He lives in Singapore, and so the beauty of this world now is that we can work with these people that live all across the ocean, and they're not mailing things, they're just sending them, and so, I think he was a great choice. I loved, how he can be childlike and yet still capture some of if especially he does it in the first and in the second, great, like, depth and, different perspectives, like pulling us way out or, yeah, just different things that he plays around with. But then the design team also, like, when I wrote it, I put in, like, superhero words like bang and pow, and I wanted it to feel like a little superhero-y, and so they put those in different fonts. They start every chapter with these, like, dots, kinda yeah, like a comic book would have. Yeah, so there's lots of and then there's also, like, all these things that go along with it, like discussion guides and stuff where it's like, "Make your own comic," and things like that, so we got to play around with that a lot too. But yeah, I've had teachers and parents say, "Hey, my kid, like, this was a transition for them from graphic novels to, like,
Mhm.
more of a longer length text," and not that there's anything wrong with graphic novels, I love graphic novels, but you want to have a mix if you're wanting your kid to also get some more text heavy books. This I've heard that this is helps, and you're right. I think it's because those illustrations, they're just like these little carrots and little fun things, and he I I didn't working with an illustrator was really fun. I got to see the sketches in the beginning of those main characters and go back and forth a little bit on those, and I don't know if you noticed, but in the beginning of The Minor Miracle and in the beginning of The Minor Rescue, they've got these character lineups, and it's, like, my most favorite illustration because it's just, like, you've got Noah and his best friends Haley and Rodney, and you've got that bad guy Saul and all these characters, and as a reader, and I think also as an adult, I'm really bad at names, and often I flip back to the beginning and I remind myself who people are. I used to do that. I feel like there was some Shakespeare that I used to read where it was like the characters were all at the beginning, so you could flip back and remind yourself, "Who was that person?" Yeah, so I love how it that's not really comic booky, but I love that also about how he did the illustrations.
Yeah, and I love the way you described it. It's almost this like transitional form between a graphic novel and like a more standard uh just a work of fiction
Mhm.
because uh, it's interesting. I've been looking at this sort of spectrum between the comic books on one end, then just the book with no illustrations on the other, and there's like this continuum in between them. Like I interviewed a graphic artist a couple weeks ago, John Hendricks.
Oh, yeah. He's amazing.
He is amazing, and his graphic novel, it's a graphic novel, but it has long prose sections, so it's
Yes.
almost like a step over from graphic novel. Then,
Yes.
like, yours is one step over from there, where
Yeah.
it's a novel, but it
Right.
has the illustrations that permeate it,
Yes.
and I totally agree. It's like, if you have a kid who might feel comfortable with the graphic novel, but jumping into the book with all that text seems a little intimidating, this is a great way to sort of nudge them over the edge. I think it does a really, really great job of keeping younger readers engaged in the text.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we are sadly running a little low, but there's a few questions I absolutely wanted to ask you. Um, First off, this is going to be this is very important. You talked about how you first got interested in superheroes with Spider-Man. Who's your favorite superhero?
Oh, I honestly feel like it's Spider-Man just because I've researched him and I've watched tons of movies about him. It's not the Hulk. I really don't like how angry the Hulk is. He's disturbing to me. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a boring answer since we've already talked about Spider-Man so much, but I think I love him, and I love that message that comes out of that first with great power comes great responsibility. I just feel like that's such a powerful line, and it sticks with me, and so, yeah. How about you? What's your favorite superhero?
So this is something I've been a little, I don't know if concerned is too strong a word, but something I've noticed about myself. So I'm a child of the 90s.
Mhm.
So when I was very little, we had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Mm.
Then a few years after that, we had the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and then
Uh-huh.
I graduated to the superheroes, right?
Uh-huh.
So my favorite turtle was Leonardo. My favorite Power Ranger was Jason the Red Ranger. Then my favorite superhero was Captain America. So for those following along at home, what do they all have in common? They're all like the leaders of the group, and they're all boring. They're like the boring, responsible leader. So it's like, wait a sec, does this say something about me? I'm not like the cool one, the funny one, the rebel. I'm the boring, responsible. I'm telling myself it doesn't matter, but part of me is like, "Ugh, that's what you chose
It
when you were
says
a kid. It must say
something.
something."
I'm sure there's some sort of quiz you can take where it's like, "Tell me your favorite superhero, blah, blah, blah," and then it'll totally, like, break down what personality type you are.
There you go.
I have
I'd
to
be afraid to know.
say
Captain America, you are boring. You are
no,
boring and
no, you are
responsible.
noble, and you fight for justice.
There you go. There you go. Thank you. I'll go to that one. So, final question, because I saw this on your website, and I just have to ask. So, you mentioned that you've worked at bookstores for a long time, and one of the perks of that job is you get early editions of upcoming releases. So, you read the first Harry Potter book before it was open to the public,
Yes, I
before it
did.
became the phenomenon. So, my
Yes.
question is,
Yes.
as you're reading it, did you think this is special? I feel it, or was it like, oh, it's pretty good?
Oh,
What was your gut reaction?
I knew it was gonna be huge, and I we passed it around, we fought over it because we worked at a place called Toad Hall, we were called the Toadettes because it was all girls, and we all loved it, and we all fought over it, and I often wonder because it was a galley, it wasn't a real copy, and I wonder what happened to it, like, who has the galley? Because 'Cause I'm sure it's worth something, but we knew it, and I didn't really I hadn't really followed it in England and known, like, what a hit it had already become because it came out a year earlier there. I'm pretty sure a whole year earlier. But,
Mm.
yeah, I loved that first book. I haven't loved all of them as much as but the first one, I was so captured by
Mhm.
it. I'm a big fan, and I love all the movies, and I watch them every year and all of that. So, I just think it's a great world, and again, like a superhero world, it is a
Mhm.
world, and the whole idea of that Hogwarts letter, and you never know if you might get it, and all of a sudden you're doing this a crazy amazing thing, that sense of, like, what if it happens today is what I'm trying to capture with my book. So, yeah, wish I had that galley.
I love that answer, and I love that you will always be able to say you've been a fan of Harry Potter longer than anyone else that you
Probably
know, right?
so.
You're one of the originals. You
Yes.
cannot beat that. I
Yes.
love that.
Yeah.
So, like I mentioned, we are sadly running out of time, but once again, Meredith Davis. The book series is The Amazing Adventures of Noah Minor. The first book in the series is The Minor Miracle. The second one, which is hot off the presses, came out this past May, is The Minor Rescue. So Meredith, where can we find you? Where can we find your books?
Yeah, you can find my books wherever you buy books. You can get them at your indie, you can get them at Barnes& and Noble, you can get them at Amazon, and you can find me at meredithldavis.com. And I'd love for you to check out that website. There's lots more information and backstory and all kinds of goodies on there. And for teachers, there's all stuff about school visits. So, yeah, it's a good place to kind of connect. I've got a Substack as well. It's called Author with a Kidlit Crush. And I do book reviews there, book recs, and mostly themed picture books because I just love picture books. I've always loved them. But yeah, hopefully someday you'll have some picture books out on the shelves that say Meredith Davis on them as well.
Awesome. Oh, that is really great. I will keep a lookout for those. That sounds fantastic. And once again, Meredith Davis, thank you so much for joining us. And listeners, as you can tell, things are winding down at the Anselm Society Digital Pub. The fire is down to embers, the customers are trundling home, and you've polished off your final glass. Once again, Believe to See is a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. If you have an extra, maybe 30 seconds or so right now, please rate and review the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.